for the first time. Maybe you've been visiting for a long time, but you haven't really made a decision whether this is the right place for you, and maybe you're kind of struggling because it's a measure of trust, right? Maybe you've been hurt in the past by church or by religious folks, and you're not sure you want to get into those waters again. But I want you to know that this is a safe place for you, that these people will love you and care for you. We're not looking for members, and I've said this before, membership is about what privileges you get, but we're looking for people that are going to partner with us and share this good news, this place, this fellowship, this message. We want to share the melody that permeates all that we say and do. So we're so excited to be here, and we're looking forward to another 6 months with you. But we've kind of come, while I was away, I was kind of thinking about, we come right after Christmas, right after New Year's. Christmas is kind of that, high point of the church. The church is decked out, and we're ready, and we're in our best, and we've got trees and greens all around. And then we hit New Year's, but then you kind of hit this January. What do we do in January? What are some of the things that we do? And I wanted to think about, where do we go from here? Who are we, and what are we going to do as people, as a church? What kind of a community are we going to build? And so our message today is really about, where do we go from here? Maybe you're in that spot as well. Maybe you're looking at your life and you're saying, what is God going to do with us? What is he going to do with me in my life? And I want to share a story. Earlier in last May, our family had an opportunity to go to Myrtle Beach. First time we'd ever been to Myrtle Beach. And we had a chance to stay at a friend's condo right on the beach. It was right on the beach. It was really great. Have you ever been to the beach? There's a phenomenon that happens at the beach that sometimes is you take for granted, but you don't really pay attention to it too much. It kind of goes into the background, but it's really important. One of the things that happened when we get to the beach, you kind of go crazy because you haven't been there in a long time, and you jump out into the water and you start body surfing. Have you ever tried body surfing? Do you have a body that is ready to surf? That's probably the question that we ought to ask. But you start playing and you start frolicking and you're having a good time and you're celebrating. You're on vacation. Wow, the sun is out, the beach is there, the sand, the surf, everything is happening, and you're playing. And all of a sudden you notice that we'd been playing in the water for like a half hour, just kind of rolling around and running in the surf and swimming and floating and doing all that stuff. And we kind of, after a half hour, we looked up and somebody had moved our condo. It wasn't there anymore. It had moved. Somebody had moved our condo about a quarter of a mile down the thing. And we said, well, how did that happen? Now, you're aware that there's a phenomenon that happens when you're at the beach. It's called the undertow. And you're playing and you're paying attention, but here's the important thing. Slowly, bit by bit, almost imperceptibly, you're drifting. You notice that you're drifting. And an important thing is, if you have a mom, usually it's the moms, because in our family, the dad's is in the water. He's the one that's in trouble. But mom usually is on the beach and she starts yelling, get out of the water, move back to where I can see you, and then you can, because they know that you're moving, you're drifting. And here's what happens, is eventually with the undertow, if you're not careful and you just kind of, you're oblivious to it, eventually what happens is, the reason that it's dangerous is eventually there's an undertow that will take the water back out to sea. And if you're not careful, as you're just drifting along, frolicking, you notice that all of a sudden you're a little bit deeper in the water than what you had intended. You see, nobody is really afraid of the ocean when it's just here at your ankles or even at your knees. You're in total control. And if you fall down, big deal, you just stand right back up. You are in control. But sometimes you can drift to a place where you can't touch. Have you ever done that? You're out in the ocean and you're playing, and all of a sudden you reach down and there ain't nothing there. And all of a sudden there's that panic. I don't know what's down there. You see, sometimes in our own lives we can do that. We get to a place where we drift in our own lives. And what are some of the things that whoops. You're going to have to help me, sport. One of the things that happens, let me just help with this. One of the things that will happen, has you ever gotten to a place where you say, I don't know where I am anymore, and I don't know how I got here? You see, we live in the flow of time, And if we don't pay attention to what's happening around us, as we're playing, as we're doing life, as we're going through the motions, as we're having a good time, we're building our family, we're building our career, we're getting our house in order, we're getting our kids through school, slowly, bit by bit, we're drifting. We're drifting to somewhere we didn't intend to go. And maybe you're at a place, or maybe you know somebody in your life that is looking at their life and going, how did I get here? I don't know how I got here, and I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I feel lost. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You see, the Bible tells us that we've all drifted. It isn't just for, those wicked people that are outside. All of us, if we don't pay attention to what's happening, we will all drift. We will all go somewhere where we didn't intend. And so this morning, as we think about that, we have to ask the question, what is it that God intended for us? We're all being drawn to something, but we're not sure what it is. Have you ever watched a movie came out several years ago called Patch Adams? It was by Robin Williams. Robin Williams is a doctor, and he kind of goes through a metamorphosis in his own understanding. And at the beginning of it, Robin Williams his life has just fallen away. And he's on a bus, but he's on his bus to a psychiatric hospital because he becomes suicidal. His life has no meaning. And he's come to a place, and he says, in the beginning, he said, all of life is a journey home. Salesmen, secretaries, beekeepers, all of us, all the lonely hearts of the world are just trying to find their way home. He says in the beginning that all of us have gotten somewhere we didn't intend to be. We didn't want to be here. Do you remember when you were a child, maybe you can remember that far back, that you wanted to be something? I wanted to be an astronaut or a doctor or a nurse, or I wanted to be a cowboy, or I wanted to be something spectacular. I had a dream one time that my life was going to be special, and here I am going through the motions. How did I get here? And where am I anyway? It seems like my life has just drifted. You see, all of us are longing to go home. Longing, if you look it up in the dictionary, it simply means a desire for something that is beyond your grasp. There's something out there. We're not really sure what it is, but there's something that we're desperate to have. This morning and for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be going through this series. It's called An Awakening. Because I believe that in the new year that we all have an opportunity to come awake, if you will, to come alive. I love the example of Olivia and Tiffany that came up and sing, right? They have a talent. Now, they could choose to sit on that talent and just protect because they're afraid, or they could let it go. And they could hear you embrace them. And that's what we want for you. That's what we want for all of you. Not because we need more people in the pews, but because we want people to come alive. There's so many people that are out there treading water. And what happens to most people? They go along with life, and life happens, and they drift. But eventually, the riptide comes to them, and they go out to sea, and eventually something happens. Maybe it's a medical report. Maybe they lose their job. Maybe they lose a relationship. Maybe there's a death. And all of a sudden, they can't touch anymore. And what happens in the ocean is people panic. They get nervous, they get afraid, and they start fighting as hard as they can against the inevitable. They start trying to swim upstream, and they get tired, and then they die. And so what we want to be able to do is recognize that there is a safe place. Don't follow the current. Know where you are. Find your place home. Let me see if I can get this thing to... No. All right. We're going to have to go with plan B there. What we're going to do is we're going to find that God wants to find you even more than you want to find him. God recognizes that we've drifted. And so when we found ourselves in deep water, God sent his son to find us. This morning we're going to take a look at a passage from Luke's gospel. It's a story that you know really well. It's the story of the prodigal son, but we're only going to look at part of it. We're going to look at the part about the son coming to his awareness, and maybe it'll speak to you in some way. Maybe it'll touch a part of your life. Beginning in chapter 15, Jesus continued. Whoops, this isn't working real well. Oh yeah, it's always my fault. Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to the father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, and he set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. He had spent everything. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to citizens of the country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went home." We're talking about finding our way back to God. The bottom line here is, in this story, the story that Jesus tells, is he tells that the younger son was restless. He was looking for something. He wanted something deeper. He wanted to try his own wings, and he wanted to do it his own way. And haven't we all tried to do that at one time? Haven't we in our younger days or in the days around us saying, "It's my way. Nobody's going to tell me what I need to do. I want to do my own thing." And slowly we drift. Now, in the first century in the Near East, the story has a powerful impact. The father had ultimate authority over the family. In a society where life was very tenuous at best, the father was both the protector and the authority figure. He guided the family. And so when a younger son comes and says to the father, "Give me my inheritance," he is essentially saying to the father, "I wish you were dead now that I could have all of your money and do whatever I want. I don't want your authority. I just want your money." The father, strangely enough, gives him what he asks for. Just as your heavenly Father will give you the freedom to do what you want to do. And so he went off and he tried everything that he had. He spent it on wild living, on doing exactly what he wanted, but eventually he drifted, and eventually life caught up with him. M. Scott Peck, in his book, A Road Less Traveled, once said, "The beginning of all mental health begins with this one phrase: life is difficult." All mental illness begins by trying to believe that we can somehow circumvent the realities of life. It is hard, and sometimes it catches up with us. And so the younger son is out there when there's a famine, and everything that he has is lost. And he finally begins feeding the pods to pigs. Now, to a Jew, that means essentially that he had lost his humanity. He no longer became a human being, according to Jewish. He began feeding the pigs. And as a matter of fact, he began longing to feed off of just what the pigs were eating. He became less than human. The first thing that we have to understand about all of us is there a longing in you for something more? Not just acquiring wealth, not just acquiring property, but about being something, about a sense of nobility, about being inspired to be something greater than yourself, about giving yourself to a cause of lifting up humanity. The first thing we recognize is we are all restless. It was back in the 3rd century that Augustine said, "You have made us for yourself, O God, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee. We will never find the peace that we're looking for until we find it in God." So we have drifted. We have to acknowledge at the very beginning, at the very outset, that we've drifted. Until we come to that understanding, the rest of what I have to say is completely useless. If you're content right where you are, doing exactly what you're doing, then you're going to do it until you get to a crisis in your life. The trouble is sometimes those crises, sometimes they're overwhelming. And instead of just awakening to the prospects, they just overwhelm us to the reality. The first thing that I want us to understand is that we've drifted from God. We all need God in our lives. In Isaiah's prophecy, God is speaking to us when he says, "We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us have turned to their own way. We have substituted what is true for something else." Some of us have drifted so far away and we said, well, close enough. Everybody else is doing it. Why not me? But we know deep down inside, this is not where I want to be. I don't know where I am and I don't know how I got here. And I need somebody to help me find my way back home. So what Jesus did, what God thought was a good idea, is he said, I'm going to create a church. I'm going to create a community that's on a journey, that journey back home. And together we will encourage you and we will support you and we will challenge you. And maybe we might even confront you. Don't give up. Don't give in. Believe that you have something special. Until you come to that recognition, you're going to be happy just feeding the pigs. Maybe you've got a great job. Maybe you're pulling in 6 figures. Maybe you have you're called the CEO of whatever it is that you do. It doesn't matter. Feeding the pigs goes by different terms, but it's still all the same. You're feeding the beast. God wants something more for you. But until you recognize, I've drifted away from God, we won't seek to go home. The second thing that happens is we've drifted from worship. We all worship something. There's something that is hungering and thirsting within you. G.K. Chesterton was the one. Oh, there it is. Hot dog. Thank you. G.K. Chesterton once said, "For when we cease to worship God, we do not worship nothing, we worship anything, everything." Think about it. How many people do you know worship the clothes that they wear? I got to have the right style. I got to have the right cell phone. I want to worship the right car so people think well of me. It isn't that we worship nothing, we'll worship anything. Whatever the social trends are, whatever is hot and fashionable is what we worship. And what happens to your family, to your kids, to your life? You drift. And eventually you'll look up and say, that's not where I wanted to be. I don't know where I am, and I don't know how to get home. We've drifted from worship. The third thing that happens, we've drifted from joy. You see, sometimes joy is the pursuit of a great and noble adventure. There was a story about Shackelford when he was calling people to go on an adventure. He put out an advertisement saying that he needed adventurers, people that were willing to risk everything to discover what was unseen and unknown by human beings. But the risks were high, and few might even survive. And yet, the line to sign up for such an adventure was longer than he had anticipated, and he turned people away. We are looking for a joy that fills us up. If you get up this morning and you go out and you find that the sun is shining, and you say, that's great, that's happiness. It is circumstantial and it makes you happy in the short term. It's what you were looking for. Joy transcends circumstances. If it's raining or it's sunny, because you have something that you are pursuing, something bigger than yourself that fills you up. We have drifted from true joy. We are satisfied for less good things, for things that are temporary. I like this quote by C.S. Lewis. He said, "We are half-hearted creatures, fooling around with things like drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is being offered to us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are too easily pleased." We like things easy and comfortable when adventure and wonder and majesty and mystery are being offered to you. And so the question that I want to ask is there more? There has got to be more. There's got to be more than all of this. There's got to be something to inspire us. And here's the promise that God makes to each and every one of you. The first thing is we long for a purpose. You see, each of you is created for this time and this place. Each of you has a unique fingerprint, a unique facial body style, unique hair. Everything about you is unique. You are a one-of-a-kind masterpiece that was created in this time and this place. And as a result of that, when you come to understand what your purpose is, then you understand you have value. You're not just going through the motions. You're not just lost. God created you for a reason. There has got to be something about you that is special. And God wants you to discover that. It's an awakening. It's finding our way back home. Jesus says something very important that this parable hinges on. And few of us will actually catch it. In the very beginning, at the very middle of it, I guess, the man is feeding the pigs with pods, and it says something very powerful for all of us. And then he came to his senses. He came to himself. He came to his senses. How many people do you know that you live with or you work with? They're comfortable just feeding the pigs. That's all I'll ever be. That's all I ever want to be. That's all I ever intended. When God had something better. You are a son or a daughter of the King. You have nobility blood pulsing through you, and yet somehow we have forgotten that. We have settled for feeding pigs. You have a purpose. The second thing I want us to understand is that we were all made for love. If you ever get in trouble with the law, they send you to prison. If you get trouble in prison, they send you to solitary. They recognize that the greatest punishment any human being can go through is loneliness, despair. You were created to be in a relationship with others, to be connected with others, to be in a fellowship where people appreciate your gifts and talents and bring the best out of you. As you do that, that is developing a level of trust, a deep level of trust. Do you have that sense of trust in your community? When we invite people to become part of our fellowship, what we're really doing is saying, do you trust us yet? Do you trust us, what we're trying to accomplish? Will you be a part of our mission and our vision? Will you partner with us to go out and share good news? Do you love yet? And finally, we want to have a life of significance, a life that is able to give back something. There's something about us that we were meant to add value to the human experience. God has given you a voice, a talent, a mind, something that will contribute to the good of all. Do you know what that is yet? Or have you drifted so far that you look at yourself in the mirror and say, there's nothing special about me. I don't have anything anybody could want. I don't know how I got here, and I don't know how to get home. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at how to get back home, how to take that journey, how to awaken, how to find our way back to God. But I want to ask you one favor, one challenge, and it's going to be hard. And I don't want to make it lightly. I want to go through a 30-day prayer challenge with you. But be careful, be forewarned. It is not for the faint of heart. I want you to get up every day, if you don't mind, if you want to be a part of this, and simply pray this one sentence. God, if you are real, make yourself real to me. That sounds pretty easy, but it's not. Because so often we want to put an added phrase. We want to say, God, make yourself real to me as long as you don't disrupt my schedule. As long as you run it by me first. And here's the challenge. I fully believe, and I'm going to be praying for you, that God makes it real to you. And for some of you, that's going to be hard. Some of you are going to be some of you are going to be blessed, and some of you are going to be awakened. And I pray that all of you find your way back home, because God is drawing you to something better. And I believe that in the next year, together, is going to be the finest year that you've ever had. But it begins by awakening, by coming alive. Today you're going to have an opportunity to come through communion and share in the covenant. It is God's invitation, it is God's promise to say, this is how much I love you. You have no fear, you have no reason to be anxious or to worry. I will be with you, but I want you to partner with us to come and experience the fullness of that awakening. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, pour out your Holy Spirit upon us and upon this gathering, that as a family that we celebrate together, you're calling upon our lives to draw us back to your side. For those that are stressed and anxious and afraid, calm their troubled spirits, that we may find again your presence among us, guiding and nurturing us. In Jesus' name, amen.